Hello, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to my channel, and in this video we are going to be creating a quiz application using HTML, CSS and JavaScript. We are going to try our best to keep everything as basic as possible, and we are going to build everything from scratch without using any external library or anything like that. So for this course I'm just going to list out the prerequisites. That includes a code editor. As you know, I already use VS Code, and also in VS Code there is this extension called Live Server. So if you come to this extension tab, and you search for Live Server, this very one at the top is what you need to install. It's really not compulsory, but if you want to, you can just install it to make our work faster. The function of Live Server is that it automatically reloads our website whenever we make changes to it. So I think that's all. Also, we are going to need a browser. For this video I'm going to be using Brave browser. You can use Chrome, you can use Mozilla Firefox, you can use any one of your choice. And also for the code editor, you can use Sublime Text, you can use Atom, and any kind of editor that you like. You can even use Notepad++. It's actually your preference. So let's continue. So for this project, we are going to have 4 files in the roots of our directory. I've already opened my folder in my code editor. Sorry, let me increment this. Okay. I've already opened my folder in my code editor, and I'm going to create the first file, which is the index.html. Index.html. The function of this index.html is to hold the basic structure of our web page. So I'm just going to use this shortcut. When you put the exclamation mark like this and you press enter, it's going to give you a basic structure of a HTML document. So let's just call this one quiz app. Okay, and also I'm going to create 3 more files, but let us just continue for now. So in the head tag we are going to add a link, and then I'm going to link it to style.css. so these are just some shortcut. I just type link and everything just prefills. So this is where we are going to add the style to style our HTML page. So we're just going to write some few markups here. Class is equal to main wrapper, and I'm just going to call this one a div. I'll give it a class is equal to quiz container, and I'll also say the ID is equal to quiz container. So in order to view this on our web page, for those of you that are not using VS Code, and maybe you are using another browser and does not have another code editor and it does not have Live Server extension, you can come over to my folder is right in my desktop. So I'm not going to navigate to desktop right here. Once I open the quiz app, I can click here and it's going to open in my browser. So once I double click on this, it's going to open this web page on my browser. But for those of us that are using Live Server, which is what I'll be using in this tutorial, once you have Live Server installed, around this place you're going to see this Go Live link. Once you click this link, it's going to open up a Live Server tab on our web page. So this is the tab. I'm going to try my best to make this video as fast as possible. So I like us to be seeing the changes as I'm writing the code. Okay, and also one thing to have in mind is that I'll be focusing more on the JavaScript part of things. So I'm just going to keep the style as basic as possible and just focus mainly on the design. Sorry, I'm not focused mainly on the JavaScript functionality. So we have this index.html. Then we are going to have some few things inside it. First of all, let's go like this. I'm going to have another div. We give it a class. Let's call this one pointer container, and let's make it contain a h3, and let's say question 1 of 5. So this is just going to be like an indicator of the current question that we are on. You can see our live server is automatically updating our web page. So let's continue. We're going to add another div at the bottom here, and then this div is just going to contain the question. So let's just say, hello world, what are we doing here today? So this is the question, and then I'm going to add another div, and this div contains the list of multi-optional answers. So this is going to contain the multi-optional answers. Okay, so I'm just going to use div, then I'll give it a class, and I'll call it I'll give it the class of each answer. Then right inside the each answer, I'll then add an input type with the type of radio. Then I'll give it a name of let's call this one answer button. Then I can give it a value of cooking. Then maybe at this place I can just say cooking. Then this is supposed to generate a radio button with cooking right at the front. So if we replicate this now 4 times, we're supposed to have 4 options for our question. Yeah, and there we go, we have it right there. So after that, we are supposed to add the list of buttons. We're supposed to add the list of buttons right at the bottom of our code. So I'm just going to do something like this: give class, and I'll call it action buttons. Now the action button is just going to contain our next button, our previous button, and it's also going to contain maybe the jumper buttons. I call them jumper buttons in this tutorial. The jumper buttons, the function of the jumper buttons is just to move from any question to another question number. Like maybe from question 1 you want to move to question 4, maybe from question 7 you want to move back to question 1. You don't have to be going step by step. You can click and move to that question. You can traverse through your question in any way. So I'm not going to add a button, and then I'll give it a class of previous and next. Then I'll just call this one previous, then I'll call this one next, and in between them I'm just going to create some few buttons, and I'll give them a class is equal to jumper button. Then I can say something like maybe 1, 2, 3, and 4. So here we go. We have a very basic setup of our design, but it looks really ugly. Also, I would like us to add one more button. So we want to provide a button that allows the user to submit at any time of their choice. So I'm just going to create another button right here. I'll call this one button, and I'll give it a class is equal to previous next, and I'll give it a star is equal to, let me just give it a background color of red. I think this should do just fine. Also we need to add something inside it, submit. Okay, so let's try to style our page a bit. In order to do that, as you can see here, we have already created we have already linked the style.css that is in our base directory, but we have not created the file yet, so we're just going to do that right now. Style.css. Okay, let's go. So first of all, I'm going to start by styling our main wrapper. I'm going to start by styling our main wrapper. So I'm going to give it a font family. Let me just give it Georgia. Yeah, this should work just fine. Then a width of 100%. also give it a height of 90 VH. As I said initially, I won't be explaining the designs. I'll just make things as fast as possible so we can get to our JavaScript real fast. Inline flex, and the flex direction is going to be column, and align items center, justify contents center. Okay, let's move to our quiz container. Yeah, this container right here, this is the next thing we are going to style. So quiz container. So we're just going to give it a background color of RGB 231, 221, 221. Okay, I'm going to give it a box shadow of gray, 2 pixel, 2 pixel, 2 pixel. That's all for our quiz container. We also want to style every single div that is, so every div that is next to the quiz container, I want to give them a margin of 20 pixel. Then let's continue. We also need to design each of the answers. So each answer. So this is going to represent this in our design. So this div right here, each of these div, that's what we're trying to style right now. So we're just going to give it a margin, top and bottom 10 pixel, left and right 0%. So that is kind of creating our page for us. So we're just going to design, now we're going to design the buttons, jumper. This is going to represent the jumper buttons and the previous and next button. So I'm just going to add a little padding. I'm going to add a little padding and give it 5 pixel and give it 10 pixel. So top and bottom is going to be 5 pixel, left and right is going to be 10 pixel. Then give it a margin, top and bottom 2 pixel, left and right 0%. Give it a background color of blue. Give it a color of white. Give it a border of white, 1 pixel and solid. Now I'm going to give it a cursor of pointer. So after this, our design should look like this. This is looking a bit good. Then the next style that I want to create is called active. So the function of this class is not in our code right now, but we are going to use it in our JavaScript to check for the current question that to add a style for the current question that the user is on. So we are going to use this later in our JavaScript. So let's just write it now. I just want to change the color to blue. Then I also want to add a border of blue, solid 1 pixel. Okay, then we have the action button. So the action buttons, I think if I should scroll down, those are the buttons that are contained inside. The action button represents this div. So when we are styling it, we are making reference to this div. So let's just style the action buttons right now. So I'm going to action buttons. So for the button in here, we are styling the hover effect. So for every button that is inside the action button container, we are adding a hover effect. So let's go. For the hover effect, I'm going to set the background color to be white. We're also going to set the color to be blue, and then we're also going to set the border to be blue solid 1 pixel, just the active class. So let's go, guys. I think that will be all for our basic CSS design. So at the end of this, we should have a basic screen like this where you can select, and we should have this hover effect. We should have the submit having its own hover effect. So now we need to include 2 more files just before the closing body tag, and those are JavaScript source files, questions and source. So the function of both of these files, the questions file is going to contain the list of questions I want to use for our application, and the source.js is where we are going to undo all of the behaviors of our application. So the reason why we are declaring the question.js before the source.js is because the source.js file depends on the question.js, because we are going to use the questions inside the source.js file. So let's just create both of these files without wasting our time. Questions.js. Also going to create source.js. So in our question.js, let's just create a variable and call it const questions is equal to an array containing objects. Let's say the question is what is the name of this channel. Then we move, then we say options is an array that has let's say code sculptor, code builder, code destroyer, code maker, and then we are going to say the answer is code sculptor. Then we move to the next question. So question, let's say 1 plus 1 is options. Let's say 2. Sorry, I forgot to add a comma here. 2, 3, 5. Sorry, 5 and 19. Then the answer is going to be 2. Then the next question, let's say question, which of these is a programming language. Let's give options. We are going to give an array, let's say HTML, CSS, JavaScript, JSON. So we know our answer is JavaScript. Okay, let's add one more question to make our application a bit robust. So let's say what is my name. You can add options. Let me Fatokun, David Shokumbi, Wale Adenusi. Sorry, these are just my friends. Daniel Adewale. So we obviously know that the answer here is okay. The answer here is Femi Fatokun. So right here we have an array of objects, each of the objects representing each question, and the question having a question, the option which is also an array, and an answer. So these are the questions that we are going to be using in our application. You remember this, what is rendering currently is just a dummy. So let's go, guys. In our source.js file, first we are going to create some variables. We are going to create some variables, so let's just get started. So we're going to say quiz container is equal to document.get element by ID. Thank you, VS Code. I'm going to call it quiz container, this has to be exactly, the quiz container has to be exactly the same thing with this. So we just check that right now. In our sort.js file, it has to match because we are trying to target that DOM element. Then let's create another variable, and let's call this one selected answers. I'm going to make this to be an empty object. Then let's just initialize two more variables. Let's question, and then let's index. So the question is going to be the question that is currently on the screen, and the index is going to be the index of that question in our questions array. So the first thing that we're going to do is that we're going to create a function, and I'm going to call it const show question, and it's going to have a parameter called I. Yes, just like that. Then inside our function, the functionality of this, the job of this function actually is to render our question onto the DOM. So inside our question, we are going to have inside our function, first of all, we are going to set the value of the index that we just created to the index that has been passed, because you can see the function receive one argument, which is the index of the question. This index represents the index of the question in this questions array that is available in the questions file. So let's continue. Then the next thing to do, we are going to check if the question is actually available. So like I said initially, we can now use the questions variable here. So we are going to check if the question as point index is true. Else we are going to show an alert question, let's just say invalid question. So let's try something here. Like I said initially, we can now use this questions variable that is declared in our questions file. We can use it in our source file, because in our HTML we are loading the questions file before we load the source file. So now let's try something. Let's try on our function. So let's say show question one at index, let's say 20. You will see it's going to display invalid question. So that is that. So I'm just going to comment this out for now. That shortcut is actually Control / or Command / for the Mac users. Okay, let's continue. So right here we need to get the question at the current index. So we need to set the value of this question to the value of questions at this current index. So let's go. We're going to say question is equal to questions at the current index. Okay, so now this question variable is available to other function too, and it now contains the question at the given index. Okay, so later on we are just going to set the value of quiz container dot inner HTML is equal to. Okay, so now we are going to take our markup from this place, all the entire thing that is right in this place, because we want to render our question dynamically from our JavaScript. We don't want to have a dummy question typed into our HTML. We are going to take this entire string and take it to our source.js file, and we'll paste it right inside this place. So for this, I'm just going to set our question to run at the index 0. So this is supposed to load the first question. So we're supposed to have something on our application. As you can see, we have this being rendered on our page, but then we want to get the question. So in our case, the 0 index represents this question, the first question in our questions array. So the 0 index actually represents this question. So let's go from here. First of all, we can set the value of this question 1 of 5. We can set it dynamically by simply saying question index plus 1 of questions dot length. So by doing this, we should have question 1 of 4, which is 2. Now remember that our index is going to start reading from 0, and we don't want to have something like question 0 of 4, which is actually question 1. That's why we have to add 1 for every question. And the question dot length represents the length of questions that we have in our application currently. So this is it. And for this, for the question itself, we can say something like this. You can say question dot question. So also remember that the current question now, this question here, which is this question right here, now represents the value of this question, the first question in our list, because we passed the index 0 to our show question function. So having this now, we can set the value. You can see that this what is the name of this channel is the first question that is in our questions array. So let's continue. So the next thing we want to do is that we want to show a loop of all our option that is related to all the options that is related to the question, and then we want to show a list of jump buttons right here and do some other cool stuff. But we can actually do the coding all here, but I would like us to make this code as simple as possible. So I want us to write another function which is going to be generate options. I'm going to call it generate option, and the functionality, the job of this function is simply to generate the options, so that we can just call one single function here and we have our list of options rendered into the page. So let's create a function up here. Let's call this one const generate options, and it's going to be a function that does not receive any parameters. Then let's go. So let's just set a variable to options. Then let's do a for loop. Now we are going to loop over the options for that particular question. So we are going to do something like this. For let I is equal to 0, I is less than question dot options dot length. Then I'm going to do I plus plus. Now I'm going to say let the current option is going to be equal to question dot options at the current iteration point. Then we are going to check okay, let's just do this. Let's just say the options plus equal to, we're going to say question plus equal to. Now we are going to update this options variable with an option DOM element for each of our options. So we're just going to copy only one of these, yeah, just like that, and we are going to paste it right here. Then we are going to remove the rest like this. Okay, let's continue. So now we have to update the value that is here. First, we accept that the name is answer button because they all have to have the same name, but here we need to change the value. We need to change the value to the current option, and we also need to change this cooking to the current option. Then outside our loop, let me close this so that we can have a bit more space. So outside our loop, we have to return the options. So when we call this function, it's going to generate a list of option DOM elements for that particular question, and it's going to return it. So we are going to call that right here. So let's just say let option, yeah, let's just say let options is equal to generate options. So this now is supposed to represent options, and if we do something like this, it's supposed to have options and it's supposed to render right into our screen. Yes, it worked perfectly. We have code sculptor, code builder, code destroyer, code maker, and that is exactly what we have in our questions file. And the option is actually related to this particular question. So that being said, now there's something that we can also do. Now we need to know that if our application is at its starting point, like maybe the question we are on number 1, that is on the first question, we are not supposed to be showing the previous button, and also if we are on the last question, we are not supposed to be showing the next button. So we are supposed to write that logic right here. So let's do that. we're going to do something like this, and we are going to check if index is greater than 0. We want to render this previous button. Right here. Else render nothing. Okay, so what's the problem? Yes, we can do this and it should be fine. Okay, so you can see that as the index of our current question is not greater than 0, we are not rendering the previous button because we don't want to go back when we are already at the starting point of our application of our questions. So we also want to write another condition for this particular guy right here. So we are going to say something like, these are going to check if index, yes, if the current index is less than the length of our questions, then we want to render the next button. We want to render the next button, else we just want to render nothing. So so this means that we are checking if the current index that we are is still less than the questions, is still less than the length of our questions, we want to render the next button. So that means that if we are at the end of our question list, then we won't have the next button. The next button will disappear. So let's also add an event listener to these buttons. So let's just say on click. We basically know what's going to happen here, so we can write a function and we can call the show question passing let's just pass index -1. I'm going to explain what's going on here in a bit. Let me just add the same code for our next button, except for this time we are going to be incrementing the current index. So what's going on here? This is an event listener that we added to our button, and for the previous we are going to reduce the current index and pass it to our show question function. So it's going to render the question that is the previous question, and for this we are going to increment the index of our question and render the question. So this should work right now. Let's refresh, and if I click on next, okay, there seems to be a problem. Let me quickly check the console. Okay, next button is not clicking. Sorry, I'm just going to check through my code. Okay, sorry, I'm not supposed to pass the function like this. My bad. Should work fine like this. Okay, I'm just going to refresh and I'm going to close our console so we have enough space. Then if I click next, you can see we are moving to the next question. If I click another next, we are also moving to the third question. If I click previous, we are moving back to the second question. If I click previous again, and you can see that our previous button disappeared immediately we got to the first question. If we move to the fourth question, you will also see that our next button is supposed to disappear once we move to the next. Okay, sorry, I'm supposed to add a -1 here. Yes, so I'm sorry about that, my bad. So let's go. If we get to the last question, our next button should get hidden. If we get to the first question, our previous button should get hidden. Now let me explain what is going on here to us again. So the condition here, because this question dot length is going to return the actual length, whereas our array starts counting from 0, so we have to subtract 1 from it. So that's why it was showing initially and now it's not showing again. So I think we should continue, but one other thing we should also consider is that this these jumper buttons can actually be reduced. When I say reduce, I mean they can be made into one function and then we just return it. Just like we did for the options, we are going to generate the jumper buttons. So right at the top of our file, we are just going to create a function. I'm going to call it generate jump buttons. This is going to be a function. First, let's create an empty string, assign an empty string to that. Then this time around, we are going to be looping through all our questions. So I'm going to say let I is equal to 0, I is less than questions dot length. So now we are iterating through our list of questions. Then we are going to add button elements to our buttons button string. So we're also going to create a button. Okay, so now that we are trying to reduce our code, we just have to copy one of these guys right here. I'm going to delete the rest. I'm also going to remove the rest so we can continue. Okay, let's go. So I'm just going to add this guy right here, and then right at the bottom of this place I'm going to return buttons. So let's go just like we did here. We are going to say let jumper let's call this one jump buttons. Let jump buttons is equal to generate jump buttons, and this should have that list. And once we just add it here, let's just say jump buttons, we should have our jumper buttons right in our application. Something is not right. Okay, okay, let's see, generate jump buttons. Okay, buttons plus equal to there seems to be a problem. Oh yes, we're supposed to pass questions and not question. So our application now works fine. We now have 1 and that is because we did not add any dynamic value here. So let's do that right away. We are going to make this be the index plus 1. So we now have 1 2 3 4. So you should know this is 0 1 2 3, but because we are adding plus 1 right here, that is why we are having 1 2 3 4. Okay, so that being said, there's something I would like us to add to this, because if you observe in our JavaScript code, in our CSS code, we created this very class right here, which is the active class that I said we are going to be using in our JavaScript. So we are going to add, like for a question right now that are on question 1 of 4, we want to add a unique design for this question 1 here, so that it indicates here that we are on so question, and it also indicates here. That's good for user experience. So let's go. We are going to see, since we already have the class, so I just write a condition here. I'm going to say something like so if index yeah, I'm supposed to check if I is equal to the index, then we want to also add active, else we're also going to do null. So this should fix it. You can see now we have we have our jumper buttons also indicating the current question that we are on. If you click next, you can see that 2 is now being highlighted. If you click next, you can see that 3 is now being highlighted. If you click next, you can see that 4 is now being highlighted. This is the functionality of this active class that we created. Okay, so let's continue. I would like us to add an event listener for each of these jumper buttons, so that when I click them, it actually moves me to that particular question. So nothing much. So we're also going to add an event listener to this guy right here. So I'm going to say on click, what do you want to do here? Just want to show the question, and then we just pass the current index I. So this should do the magic. So let's refresh again. If I click on 2, it's moving me to the second question. If I click on 3, it's moving me to the third question. If I click on 4, it's moving me to the next question. And it's also have this highlighting. Okay, so now we have all of these. So our application is basically very responsive. Like if I refresh, I'm at the first question, I can move to the next question, I can move to the previous, I can know the question that I'm on. So our application is actually up and running. But then there are some few things we need to add, like the user cannot select an answer yet. So let's start working on that. We need to create a new function, and we're going to call that function add answer. So let's go. Const add answer. Very good. So the job of this function is actually, whenever we click on any of these options, it actually adds the answer to our application, and the carrier of that answer is actually the selected answers object. So let's go add answer. Okay, so first of all, we are going to get all the options for the current question by doing document.get element by name. Thank you, VS Code. I really do appreciate your help. Okay, so answer button. So this is going to return an array of all the current options. The current options radio input element. That is the reason why we are using the answer button as the parameter, is because that was what we passed in our generate options function. You can see the name is actually the answer button. So we are going to loop. So let's go. We are going to loop through this. So let I is equal to 0. I is less than current options dot length. I plus plus. Yes. So let's just get the current option by doing let current option. Yes, option only. So current options at point I. So we are now going to check if it's actually, we are going to check for the one that was selected among the list of options. In order to do that, we can do this if current option dot checked is equal to true. Then we want to set the selected answer at point question dot question. We are going to set it to the current option dot value. So first of all, I already explained this, that this is going to return an array of all the current options for the current question. Then we loop through all of them, and we use this JavaScript method to check. We use this very expression right here to check if any of those options is actually being selected. If yes, initially we have this selected answer object, which is empty right here at the start of our application. So so what we just do here is that we set the answer to the current question to the value of the current option, of the selected option. So this, you can see that in our generate options function, we set the value. So that is the value that we are trying to grab here and assign it to the selected answer for that particular question. So this does the trick for add answer function. Yes. So after doing this now, our application is going to have a very basic problem. So let's refresh and let me show you the problem that our application is going to have right now. So let's say I select code sculptor for this question, and I navigate to my next question. Then I select 2. Then maybe I want to change the answer to my previous question, and I try to navigate back. You can see that my application is not preserving my initial option. So we have a solution to this, and we are going to do that right now. Okay, so in our first of all, in our generate options, we want to add an event listener for this, so we are going to say on click. On click, we just want to generate, we just want to use the add answer. We want to use the add answer function. So this means whenever we click on any of these options, we are going to call this function and try to add the answer to our selected answers. Okay, so the problem that I want to fix, we want our application to be able to preserve the selected option. So we are just going to check. We are going to write the condition right up here. We are going to write the condition up here. So I'm going to set the selection. Let's selected is equal to false, and then we're going to write this selected answer at point question is equal to option. Yes, then we are going to check the selected is equal to true. So for this part, what we are basically doing is that we are checking if we already have an answer for the current question. For the current, we are checking if we already have an answer for the current question, and also we are checking if the answer that we have for that current question corresponds to the current option for this particular iteration. So if yes, the value of this selected will become true, and then we can now write a conditional statement here and do something like this. We can say if selected, then we want to add something like checked is equal to true. We need to do something like this, and then else just do null. So this should fix the problem. This should kind of like preserve the initial answers to our questions. So let's try and test that. So if I select code sculptor and I click on next, and I select 2 and I click on next, then when I go back, I still have the answer for question 2. When I go back again, I have the answer for code sculptor. If I switch the answer to code destroyer and I switch to next, I still have my answer being preserved, and if I go back, I have the answer also being preserved here. So that has actually solved the problem. So we are just going to move forward with building our application. So we are going to create the restart quiz question function. So the functionality of this function, as I just mentioned, as the name incites, it's actually to restart the quiz. You might be wondering, we are not using this function yet. Why am I creating it? Don't worry, we are going to be using it in a bit. So I'm going to set the index. For the only thing that this function is going to be doing is to set our quiz to its initial page, to its initial state. So first we set the index to 0, then we set the selected answers to an empty object like we did up there. Then we run the show question. Then we run the show question function and pass 0, so it load the first question. Okay, and that is that. Then we need one last function for our application, and that is the submit quiz question. Submit quiz function. Sorry. Okay. So let's go. Message is equal to, are you sure you want to submit? So this is just asking them to confirm. Then let's just say answered is equal to objects.keys. Then let's pass in the selected answers. Okay, so this is supposed to now contain an array of the list of questions that have been answered. So before we continue, sorry, no, just got a pop-up there. So before we continue, we need to create something on our index page, on our HTML. So right here, let's just create this div and call it we're going to give it a class. I'm going to give it a class of results wrapper. And so in order for us to see what we are doing, let us just comment this function out for now, so we can actually see what we are doing on the page. Okay, so then we can have this h3 and put results right in here. Then we can have a div and give it a class of results details. Then we can create another div right here. Sorry, I'm creating so much divs. Let's just get this tutorial done. Then let's just say maybe 7 out of 10. So we're just going to copy these and paste it like 3 more times. Okay, so we have this right on our screen. Then we're going to add one more button that is going to be outside this place. So we're going to add another button right here. And yes, we're going to call it the function of this button is actually to restart. The function of the button is actually to restart. So we are going to add a class to it. We're going to call it, we're going to give it the class of the jumper button. So we have this design right here. So now we need to style this a bit so it doesn't look this ugly. So in our style file, first of all, wait a minute. First, we are going to style the results wrapper. The results wrapper. We are going to give it a display of inline flex. Once again, thank you VS Code. We are going to give it a flex direction of column. Align items to center. Justify content to center. You can see the changes on our page. And then let's create the result details. Then let's give it a display of inline flex, and let's justify the content to center. Okay, that works. Then let's just do dot results details, then a div for all the div that are next to it. I'm going to give them a margin of 20 pixels. Yes, so that brings us to this place. We now have attempted. That looks really ugly, so I'm just going to say attempted, correct, and also correct. Okay, so we can, sorry, not correct, wrong. So now we can see a visualization of what we are doing. So you can see what it's going to look like. So we can go back to our JavaScript code now and render our question instead. We are going to add, so right here in our submit quiz, first we need to check if answered dot length is less than questions dot length. Now what we are trying to do here is that we are checking if we have answered all the questions. So that's why we are checking for the length of the answered. If it is we are checking if we have not answered all the questions. So we are checking if the length of the answered question is less than the length of the questions we have in our questions array. So if yes, we are going to add a message to our message. I'm going to do something like this. This is basically just going to make our string to break to the next line. So you have, let's just add something like you have questions dot length minus answered dot length questions out of questions dot length unanswered. So you are basically just going to be telling them that you have not answered your questions. Are you sure you still want to submit? So then our next line is actually to ask them this. So we are going to create a new variable. I'm going to assign it to a built-in JavaScript function called confirm. Let's pass in message. So then let's say the attempted is equal to 0. Let's correct is equal to 0. Let's wrong is also equal to 0. You already know what these guys mean. So I'm going to check if they actually confirm that they want to submit. So if ask, we're going to do a for loop, do their answers, and let's go. Let's say let I is equal to 0, I is less than questions dot length I plus plus. So we are going to say the current question is equal to questions at the current index. And we're going to check if the question is actually available. If selected, answer at point question dot question is not equal to undefined. This means they actually attempted this question. We are going to increment the attempted by 1. And now we are going to check if selected, answer at the same index of question dot question is equal to question dot answer. So this time around we are checking if the answer that the user provided for that question is correct. Is equal to the answer of that question, which also means if it's correct. We are going to increment the correct, and else we are going to increment the wrong. So what we just did here is that we checked if they answered that particular question. We increment the attempted, whether it's right or wrong. Then we check if the answer corresponds with the answer that the user provided. We increment the correct, and if not, we increment the wrong. Then outside the for loop, we need to then update our quiz container. And we're going to set the inner HTML to be equal to this string that I'm about to add. So I'm just going to copy it from our index.html. So you see the reason why we created this is because we want to use it in our JavaScript. So if I come over here now and I paste it right here, so we can now add our values here by doing attempted. Then this is going to be questions dot length. So that's for attempted. This is for correct, so I'm just going to pass correct here, and this is for wrong. This is for wrong, so I'm going to pass wrong here. Okay, so that's good. One last thing to do is that we are going to have this restart button on our results page, and we have not yet hooked the event listener. So to do that, I'm just going to do on click. Remember, we created an event listener right up here, the restart quiz function. That is going to be our event listener. That is what's going to restart the quiz. So I'm just going to pass restart quiz right here. Okay guys, so I think that is the end of this. So that's the end of us writing our code. So let's try and do some testing. So first of all, let's refresh our application. We have our clean application. Let's go. So I answer code sculptor, I move next. Answer is 2, I move next. Which of these is the programming language? JavaScript is the answer. I move to next. What is my name? My name is Femi Fatokun. So I answer these and I click submit. Okay, one last thing that we missed to do is actually to add an event listener to the submit button down here. So you can see the button, it does not have an event listener. So let's go. Click is equal to submit quiz, which is a function that we created up here. You can see the submit quiz function. So now we are going to restart. I'm going to test again. So code sculptor, move next, to move next, JavaScript, then Femify token. Then I want to submit. It's telling me, are you sure you want to submit? When I say okay, you can see I attempted 4, I got 4 right, and I got 0 wrong. If I restart, the application restarts again. Okay, what's up this time around? Let me pick some wrong answers. I pick code builder. I move to question 4. I pick David Shokunbi, and I try to submit. It's telling me, are you sure you want to submit? You have 2 questions out of 4 unanswered, which is actually true. I can say cancel, and I can go back. Okay, I've not answered this question. Let me pick CSS for this. And I can go back to question 2. Okay, let me pick 2 for this, and I can go back to question 1. I picked code builder before. Now let me switch my answer to code maker. Then let's submit, and okay. And you can see we actually got only 1 question right, and we got 3 questions wrong. Okay guys, so that's it for our application. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please drop a like button, help share, and also you can subscribe to my channel for more beginner friendly videos like this. Also you can hit the notification button so that whenever I drop video you are going to get notified. Okay, thank you very much. That is the end of this video.